Last week, we talked a lot of foundational stuff about the founding of our nation. We're going to make it a little more lax now, so we got a little bit more time. We can have a little more discussion. And of course, what we're talking about, courageous. We need to be courageous because a fearful nation needs a courageous church. Now, I thought this was really cool from last week. We talked about the separation of church and state. And Gabe, right? Yes, sir. Stand up and tell us what your teacher said in class that just made you think.
All right, so we were talking about somehow we were talking about computers and then somehow it turned into that, but it basically...
You can get the gospel out of anything, can't you? You
Yeah.
go from computers straight to God.
Basically, what happened was he said, I can't be talking about that because of church, a separation of church and state.
Mm-hmm.
And I just sat there quietly because I knew
Yeah.
what to tell him, but I just didn't. I didn't want to start an argument.
Mm-hmm. But you knew something was going on. You probably know more about separation of church and state than that teacher does. That's really cool. So that you can ask Mike here. I was excited about that when I heard that. So that's cool just to see that some of the information is getting out. But today, before we get really started on the 5,000-year leap, we did have a tragedy that occurred in America. It was out in Las Vegas. Many of you have heard it was very bad. There was 59 people killed, and you had 500 people wounded. Now, whenever something like this happens, whenever a crisis happens, of course, it's I think it's kind of shameful that the politicians don't even get the bodies in the ground before they start, arguing over what to do over this. So we're going to talk a little bit about the Second Amendment and guns, just to start everything off. I'm going to go ahead and put this disclaimer on this. If we talk about the Second Amendment, you get excited about the Second Amendment, don't go home to your dad's gun cabinet and look at the guns, okay? Don't do that. If you are messing with a gun, you need to have some adult supervision by someone who's qualified and trained, and make sure that you're safe in that respect. And maybe later on we might do a gun safety course. I know they're doing one down the road at Clifton. We'll talk about that later. But there's two schools of thought on how to address this. And I think it's really important that we address this in church, because you got one side saying, well, we need to either, some people are saying we need to ban guns, we need to get rid of the Second Amendment. Some people are saying we need to put a restriction on what kind of guns are sold in the U.S. And then you've also, and basically the general idea is the fact that you have less guns, you have less crime. That's what they believe. So on the other hand, the more conservative view is we keep the guns in society, and we've done well. We've lasted a long time with the Second Amendment being there, but we start preaching the gospel to people. I guarantee you, had this man who was deranged, he had evil in his heart. It was Satan making this happen. If he had probably grown up with the gospel, if he had been preached to, and someone had reached out to him, and if he would have been involved in that, it's much less likely that he would have done this. As we learned last week, you see, as nations become more corrupt and vicious, they have more need of masters. We are seeing that right now. So something very corrupt and vicious happened over the week, and now they're all wanting more laws. My argument is, if you take the guns away out of the society, what's left for the protection of that society? If you outlaw guns, the only people that are going to have guns are the outlaws, right? And you may be wondering, why are we addressing this in church? This is kind of political. Well, the reason we're addressing this in church is because I believe that the only reason that the church still stands, or not the only reason, but a big help, has been the Second Amendment. We haven't seen tyrants come into our government, take the government over, and we've never had to wield that because we've always had them. It's always been a protection. We have got more stability in America than any other country. Our Constitution has lasted over 230 years. That's a big deal. And a lot of it's called the Second Amendment. The Christian church is the most persecuted religious entity in the world. And this is why it's important that we retain that right, that God-given right, to be able to keep our own guns. So let's look at just a few statistics. And liberals are going to tell you, well, you have less guns, it's going to be less crime. Not really so. More God equals less crime, in my book. It's not the guns that are doing it. If you look right here, the USA, out of all these countries right here, we have got the highest population of guns in the world. I mean, it's just saturated. But if you look over here, homicide by firearm rate, this is how many crimes, how many people are killed. You got the lowest two, Jamaica and Brazil, are the highest two on this end. So we wonder, why is that? Well, let's just say you wanted to rob a store. Not that anybody would, but if you did, would you rather go somewhere like Texas where everybody's carrying a gun? Or would you rather go to Chicago where nobody is? If you're a thief, you're going to want to go to Chicago, right? Because I just read an article. There's an article that came up about 3 weeks ago This guy robs a store in Texas and is shot by every single person in the store. It's amazing. There's a picture of him that three dudes are drawn on him. And whenever you have that kind of culture in your community that, God said don't do bad things, but if you break, you'll pay for those bad things in afterlife and probably in this life too. But having that Second Amendment there means you're probably going to pay for it in this life also. So just to move things along real quick, murder rates in Washington, D.C., just some statistics. They put a handgun ban in. We see the murder rates skyrocket, and they start coming back down, and then they get rid of it. Look right here, murder rates in Florida. It's pretty high, all the way up until here, until 1960s, all the way over here till 1980s. They become a right to carry state, which means that you can carry a firearm on you, whenever you want to. And then you start seeing this trend go down. Why? Because people don't want to commit bad crimes whenever everybody's got a gun, or some of you might get shot. That keeps happening. So this is probably going to come up when you go to college, the Second Amendment. And I know what the professor is going to be telling you. He's going to say, well, we don't need it because they were only talking about muskets back then. When really, back then, they did have Gatling guns. They called it a puckle gun. You could sit there and crank that thing. They'd fire as many rounds as you want to, as quick as you could turn it. They're also going to tell you that you need a militia. See, we don't have a militia. It says a well-regulated militia being necessary to the security of a free state, the right of the people to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed. They're going to say, well, let's talk about a militia. Well, first of all, back then, they kind of thought it was important to say why we need laws when we pass the law. They don't want to do that anymore because it'd probably be crazy. But they said a well-regulated militia being necessary to the security of a free state. That means that we have guns to keep a tyrannical government from encroaching on our rights. If you look back to Nazi Germany, if the Jews had been armed, you probably wouldn't see near as many people die. And some people say, well, this is a political thing to talk about in church. I don't want the same thing to happen then, because it can. No matter what, there is evil in this world. The same thing can happen in America that happened over there. But it's not just for sport shooting, it's not just for hunting, and it is for your personal protection and to keep at bay any evil rulers that could tell us to do things that violate our own faith. Anybody got any thoughts on that? I know somebody's got an opinion somewhere, right? Anybody? Nobody? All right, cool. We'll get you loosened up by the end of this for sure. So they start thinking, well, you don't need a gun to protect yourself. Oh, okay. Well, we'll introduce stick here. All right, we're going to give you a stick on the way out of here, and you don't have to worry. Somebody comes up to you and they want to hurt you. You've got a stick. You can just left right. It's pretty cool. It's only $7.95. I'm selling it. In the service, come talk to me. I'll be out in the woods over there. So, caution: do not use it upon his arm with anything. Don't do that. That's not a good idea. You can also use. I got to make these if you want one. You get two for $21.95. You can go Rambo style, right? This is a cardboard cutout of M6. It'll be great. It'll be cool. Or how about this? Let's say you're in a gun-free zone. All right, gun-free zone. Everybody knows that you can't bring guns to a gun-free zone, right? Except for criminals. It's really weird. You get attacked. You hold up one of these right here. Please no. Don't hurt me now. No, see, I'm selling these two. These are $10 because they work really well. You got this, bright yellow background. These bold black letters makes them know that you're serious about not getting, raped or robbed, right? No, it doesn't work. It doesn't work because the only way to get rid of a bad guy with a gun is what? A good guy with a gun. Exactly. So anyways, I do want to talk about that real quick because I know you're going to hear things over the next week. And the reason, like I said, again, I really want to emphasize this, that the Christian church needs to know these kind of things because we have been persecuted before, and this is what has kept us from being persecuted the entire time through the United States history. But anyways, we're going to jump into the book just a little bit here, and we're going to talk about American exceptionalism. Who in here believes that America is an exceptional nation? Nobody? All right, we got a few. Got half of you? All right. This church doesn't raise hands. Yeah, I like Gabe back there. America is exceptional. Barack Obama, he said, well, let me be clear. If you live in another country, it'd be very easy to think that you're exceptional in your own right. So, it's just general patriotism. No, it's not. It's because we are exceptional. It is different here in America. And this is the first little chink in the armor that they're going to put on you when you get in college. Your college professor is going to try to make you think that America is just like every other country when it is absolutely not. Definition of this is unprecedented stability, freedom, and prosperity that is a result of the institutions and policies which produced by a unique governing philosophy. This is saying that we have, because there is a certain thing that we have done in our government, we have structured it on the same government that Israel had. Does anybody know that? That's pretty cool. And it is called unprecedented stability, freedom, and prosperity. That's why I call this book 5,000 Year Lead, because for decades and decades and centuries, you never saw technology take a big jump until America happened. And then we figured out how to have capitalism, the free market, and on top of that, you had religion and morality backing that nation up, and we started producing so much more than everybody else. This is a testament to our stability. We've had the same Constitution since 1789, over 230 years. France has had 15 since 1789. Can you imagine all those revolutions throughout the country's history? Haiti has had 23 since 1801. Brazil has had 8 since 1822, and so on and so forth, until the average length for a constitution is about 17 years. Can you imagine a new form of government rising over 17 years? Do you know that? We are so blessed to be living in a country where that doesn't happen. America holds 4% of the world's population, right? So, if that's the case, we should hold 4% of the world's GDP. GDP, for those who don't know, is gross domestic product. That's how much wealth the country has. For every house that's built, every car that's made, every chair that's made, the clothes you're wearing, that's part of the GDP, part of the wealth. So, if we got 4% of the world's population, we should have 4% of the wealth. You'd think, no, we are exceptional. We have 25% of the world's GDP. That's amazing. We produce more scientific discoveries, art, literature, commodities than the 96% of the rest of the world combined. And if you bring these things up, your professor's going, well, we have more natural resources and we've been burning so many fossil fuels that's why we're abusing the planet. Well, no, we rank 66 in the world for farmable land, and our country could feed the entire globe. What has caused that? What have we set up that has made that possible? We're going to dive into it. I like this. Cruising past communism. I want you to show, you can take a picture of this. If you have anybody that disagrees with you, you can show them this. When Haitian refugees pile into rickety boats to flee their corrupt country, they bypass the glorious communist paradise of Cuba, which is 53 miles away, the Turks, which are 110 miles away, Jamaica, 124, and Cayman Islands, 440 miles away. Instead, they head for Florida. Florida is 523 miles away. Why do you think they head all the way to Florida and they pass all these communist nations right here? Do they live early bird specials and bingo night? No, probably not. It's because the greedy, evil capitalists of America, I say that with sarcasm, still ensure a far better quality of life than any benevolent dictator. We've got it very special. We've got it made in America right now. Is anybody familiar with left versus right? Have y'all heard that paradigm? It's like if you're watching the news, you got the far left and the far right. Yeah. So usually, if you don't know, the right side is usually generally accepted as Republicans, and the left side is Democrats. Well, I'll still use that, but this is actually the correct form right here. This is the correct spectrum. This is what the founders wanted. We're going to go into this. If you want to look along in the book, I think it is, let's see, page 11. It starts talking about that. And if you want to go home and read this in detail, it makes even more sense. So, our founders' political spectrum. Over here, all the way on the right, you have anarchy. You don't want anarchy. God ordained three different, he ordained three structures, analyzed the government, the family, and the church. He says you have to have some form of government. The Zealots from in Romans, they were for anarchy. He said, no, you need some type of government. You move over a little bit to the left, you get libertarianism, but we wanted to be right here. I like to think that's where I am, a conservative. And then once you get over here, I used to think, when I first got involved in politics, Republicans are on the right side of things. They're actually trending towards center-left as we speak right now. Then you've got the Democrats, the progressives, and then communism and fascism over here. That's where the government controls everything. They tell you how to pray. They tell you if you can pray. They tell you if you can believe in God or if you need to believe in a king. And you definitely don't want any of this. Your college professor is going to tell you fascism is all the way here on the right. I don't know why they think that, but it has everything to do with communism and socialism on the left. Let's see. And this is the definition of people's law right here. This is what the founders wanted to set up. This is based on Israel's law. If you look, This is, everybody had known this. All powers in the ruler. For centuries, everyone had bowed down to a king. Israel cried out for a king. God gave them a king, and every single time it messed them up really, really bad. Of all powers in the king, the further you get down to the individual, the less power the individual has. This is not good. So if the king says that homosexuality is right or that being a Christian is illegal, you have no say in this down here. But with the founders, they wanted right here in the middle, what they call people's law. That's where you've got the national level, and you've got the state and the county and the family, but all the real power is seated right here in the people. Let's see. Can someone read me this page 15? Who's got a book? Page 15, number 1, just past halfway down. Volunteers?
Okay, where do you want me to start?
Page 15, halfway down where it says number 1.
Okay. They were set up as a commonwealth of freemen. A basic tenet was proclaim liberty throughout all the land and to all the inhabitants thereof. This inscription appears on the American Liberty Bell. Whenever the Israelites fell into temptation to have slaves or bondservants, they were reprimanded. Around 600 BC, a divine reprimand was given through Jeremiah. Ye have not hearkened unto me, and proclaiming liberty, every one to his brother, and every man to his neighbor. Behold, I proclaim a liberty for you, saith the Lord.
Change over to the next page, we see this. This is the structure of Israel's government. You had Moses here at the top. He kind of acted as the president. You also had Aaron and Joshua. They were kind of vice president, and they were in his cabinet. You had the Council of 70 and the elected representatives. This is basically our Senate and our House. This is what it's based off of. Now down here, you've got like the states, and you've got all the counties and municipalities. You've got all the families. You got 600,000 families that would vote on these people, vote for these people, and so on and so forth. But you have 3 million people with the power to govern themselves. Now, like I said before, back in 1774, 75, right before we were about ready to start the Revolutionary War, we started asking ourselves, can we govern ourselves? Can we really be accountable to one another without all these laws? They looked back at Israel and said, well, they did it one time, why don't we? Once they started doing that, they realized just how good it is to follow the Ten Commandments, just how good it is to follow nature's law, God's law. And when they started reaping those benefits, they wanted to get away from Britain really fast, because they realized it wasn't just a layout of rules that God was saying, you need to do this and don't do this. Once they started following, they realized how much better life was. Exodus 18, 13 through 26. I know that's a lot of text, but we're going to go in and find out how the government was set up. Eli, do you have that up?
Yes, I do.
All right, 18, 13 through 26.
All right. The next day Moses sat down to judge the people, and they stood around Moses from morning until the evening. When Moses' father-in-law saw everything he was doing for them, he asked, "What is this thing you're doing for the people? Why are you alone sitting as judge while all the people stand around you from morning until evening?" Moses replied to his father-in-law, "Because the people come to me to inquire of God. Whenever they have a dispute, he comes to me, and I make a decision between one man and another. I teach them God's statutes and laws." What you're doing is not good," Moses' father-in-law said to him. "You will certainly wear out both yourself and these people who are with you, because the task is too heavy for you. You can't do it alone. Now listen to me. I will give you some advice, and God be with you. You be the one to represent the people before God and bring their cases to Him. Instruct them about the statutes and laws, and teach them the way to live and what they must do. But you should select from all the people able men, God-fearing, trustworthy, and hating bribes. Place them over the people as commanders of thousands, hundreds, fifties, and tens. They should judge the people at all times. Then they can bring you every important case, but judge every minor case themselves. In this way you will lighten your load, and they will bear it with you. If you do this and God so directs you, you will be able to endure, and also all of his people will be able to go home satisfied." Moses listened to his father-in-law and did everything he said. Then Moses chose able men from all Israel and made them leaders over the people as commanders of thousands, hundreds, fifties, and tens. They judged the people at all times. They would bring the hard cases to Moses, but they would judge every minor case themselves.
Exactly. So there you got the point where you no longer have a king. Moses, to start off, he was kind of acting as a king. You know, everything comes straight to him. But as you'll find out as you start learning about politics and history, is all the local problems are solved better by the local people because we're here on the ground. We know what the problems are. We can solve them better, and we don't. That's why the founders were particularly afraid. We're in South Carolina. It's hundreds of miles up to Washington, D.C., but yet they still think they know the better way to solve our problems. That's not biblical. That's not how it's supposed to work. And two, one thing I really like, let's see. But select capable men from all the people, men who fear God, trustworthy men who hate dishonest gain, and appoint them as officials over thousands, hundreds, fifties, and tens. It's telling us right here that we need to be involved in the election process. We need to know what's going on. Select able men who hate dishonest gain. It's hard to find a politician that hates dishonest gain, but it's up to the church. If the church got involved, they'll find someone to put up there. And you know what? If they go up there and they start being dishonest, we need to be the ones to take them back out and replace them with someone new, for sure. Here's another little bit of, let's see, if I get this work. This is really cool. I thought this was awesome. This is the original proposal for the United States seal. If you follow around in the book, it is on page 18. You can see another rendition of it there. But you have Jefferson, Adams, and Franklin, some of the least religious founding fathers, according to some modern scholars. They presented this as the original proposal for the United States seal. Now, once it really got down to it, they wanted to put this on the money, but they couldn't because back then you didn't quite have the technology to get all these little details in there. So if you look, can anybody tell what this is? Can anybody tell what's going on here? Huh?
Is that
The moment where the
You got a pillar of fire out here.
is that Moses separating the sea?
Yep. You got Pharaoh's men, and the sea is coming in. The Red Sea is washing them all away. You see the Israelites out here, and then you got they're following the pillar of fire. Rebellion and tyrants is obedience to God. I don't know about you. That sounds a little bit religious. Oh. Just a tad. Let's see. Now, one thing that's whenever they first set up their government, they had the Articles of Confederation. Of course, you can read in detail about this on the book. If you want to take it home with you, you definitely can. And see what we're looking at next week as well. But back then, they had the Articles of Confederation, and it wasn't a strong enough central government. You have to have enough government to be able to govern the people, but not become so powerful that it encroaches on their rights. So back then, they couldn't pay. They couldn't pay the military. You had all these soldiers who were coming back from war, from the Revolution, and they came back. Their farms were a mess. They hadn't been there in a year or two, and they were really, just in debt. And they always had a couple rebellions over that. George Washington stopped that. That's a story you need to look up and read whenever you have a chance. But so they called a Constitution Convention, and they said we got to do something about this so we can actually tax the people and we can actually pay for our standing army. This is something that we need. And they bickered about it. I don't know why in the world they wanted to have it in June with no air conditioning and the stuff that they wear, that thick clothing. I'd probably be pretty testy too. But they were in the halls of Philadelphia, and they were arguing for weeks and weeks and weeks, and it got really heated. Like they were about ready to start challenging people to duels. Your mama's government's so big that we don't get into that. But they were really mad at each other. So eventually, Benjamin Franklin stands up. I'm gonna read this whole thing, and there's a reason to read the whole thing. He stands up June 28, 1787. He says, "Gentlemen, in this situation of this assembly, groping as it were to find political truth and scarce able to distinguish it when presented to us." So, guys, we wouldn't know political truth if it slapped us in the face. All we're doing is just arguing and bickering with one another. "How has it happened, sir, that we have not hitherto once thought of humbly applying to the Father of lights," once again, that's capitalized, he's talking about God, "to illuminate our understanding? In the beginning of the contest with Great Britain, when we were sensible of danger, we had daily prayer in this room for divine protection. Our prayers were heard, and they were graciously answered. All of us engaged in that struggle must have observed frequent instances of superintending providence in our favor." What you see, that's capitalized, talking about God. "And have we now forgotten this powerful friend? Or do we imagine we no longer need his assistance? I have lived, sir, a long time. And the longer I live, the more convincing truths I see of this proof that God governs the affairs of men." They start looking at themselves like, "Oh man, he's standing up telling we haven't been close enough to God." I want to address this too. Father of lights, you got divine protection, you got providence right here. Whenever you're in college, your college professors are going to tell you that those are deist quotes. That's something that deists end up talking about, and it's really not. Those are, you see George Washington, Benjamin Franklin, Thomas Jefferson, they all refer to God in that light. And the proof for that is they use the Geneva Bible. In the Geneva Bible, there were several hundred ways that they referred to God using this kind of language that your college professors are going to say are language of the deist. If you go into the rotunda of the Capitol, there is an enormous, it probably takes up that wall. There is an enormous painting up there of the pilgrims, and they're all gathered around a book, and they've got it open like this, and you can see it's so big you can actually read all the words and everything, and you can tell it's a Geneva Bible. So we know that they use that, and it was very common language for them to use that, and it's a Bible. They're talking about Jesus Christ at that point. So that's just another little good tidbit. If you're a college professor who tells you that, you've got a nice little rebuttal. But he goes on to say, he says, if a sparrow cannot fall to the ground without his notice, is it probable that an empire can rise without his aid? We have been assured in the sacred writings that except the Lord build the house, they labor in vain that build it. I firmly believe this, and I also believe that without his concurring aid, we shall succeed in this political building no better than those of the builders of Babel. We shall become a reproach and a byword down for future ages. I therefore beg leave to move that henceforth prayers imploring the assistance of heaven and its blessing on our deliberation be held in this assembly every morning before we proceed to business. Man, that gave me goosebumps when I read that. I just thought, wow, it's amazing. That's America's least religious founding father. Did y'all know that? In these 17 sentences, he quotes the Bible 14 different times. Not too bad for the least religious. They took a 3-day break after that, and they prayed every single day. There was a revival going on in Philadelphia. Every member attended the local churches. They sang. They prayed. They fellowshiped with one another, and they tried to figure out, how to get this right. So when they came back 3 days later, everything just kind of snapped together. It was remarkable how much easier it was for them to get along and finally come to a consensus about what they were doing. And this is, if you want to look in the book, let's see what page this is. This is the 3 branches of government. I think some of you may be, that's going to be at the bottom of page 24 and 25. So you got the executive, that is the president, he heads all this stuff. And then you got the legislative, the House and the Senate, and of course it's looking forward. They want the House and the Senate to be the most powerful out of the two because they're directly represented by the people. You got the judicial right over here. The judicial is the courts, the judges. Right now in America, the judicial has grown way too strong. Now we've got an unelected set of appointees in the Supreme Court that's going to tell each state, if you have to accept gay marriage or whatever. And they wanted him. This guy right here, the legislative, right in the middle, looking dead forward, straight ahead. There are certain checks and balances. The executive has power over the legislative and the judicial. So does the judicial over the legislative and executive. They all have powers over one another, so one branch doesn't get too strong. But once again, if you live in a society that is corrupt and vicious, that balance is going to come out of whack until it ends up looking like something like this. As you can see here, we are plunging toward tyranny. You've got the executive branch, looks like he was bitten off the head of the legislative. The judicial branch is huge. The right wing is on fire, and the left wing is so big it's pulling us forward to tyranny. So you got the 2 wings of the eagle right here. You got the problem-solving wing on the left, and you got the conservation wing on the right. Wing number 1 of the eagle, and this is on, if you want to follow on, page 26 at the top. Wing number 1 of the eagle might be referred to as the problem-solving wing, or the wing of compassion. Those who function through this dimension of the system are sensitive to unfulfilled needs of the people. They dream of elaborate plans to solve these problems. So you see all these hurricanes coming in. The problem-solving wing is the wing that says, okay, we need to go help these people, right? Wing number 2 has the responsibility of conserving the nation's resources and the people's freedom. Its function is to analyze the programs of wing number 1 with 2 questions. First, can we afford it? And secondly, what will we do to the rights and individual freedom of the people? Now, if both these wings fulfill their assigned function, the American eagle will fly straighter and higher than any civilization in the history of the world. But if either of these wings goes to sleep on the job, the American eagle will drift toward anarchy and tyranny. For pretty much, we're on the right wing, the money-saving wing. We want to make sure that we can conserve and that we don't run our debt up. Does anybody know how much the national debt is? Raise your hand.
Approximately $1 trillion.
$1 trillion? Any other guess?
Over 20 trillion.
It just hit over $20 trillion. They're printing money faster than they can spend it right now, and they're borrowing it, and you're going to have to pay that back. You're not going to see anything with Social Security. And that's why the left wing has gotten so powerful. You know, used to, like hurricane aid and stuff like that would be okay. Now they've used it for entitlement programs. They've taken over the responsibility of the church. They have used this as an excuse to help the poor, when actually that's the church's job. And when that happens, you see people who are corrupt get in there making money off of the poor, not really helping them. The church is better equipped to do that. So, let's see what we got next here. To maintain a balance. Let me see. I have it marked here on some stuff we can read. And at page 29, about halfway down, the founders warned against the drift toward the greatest left. Since the genius of the American system is maintaining the eagle in the balanced center of the spectrum, the founders warned against a number of temptations which might lure subsequent generations to abandon their freedoms and their rights by subjecting themselves to a strong federal administration operating on the collectivist left. That means, you know, with more government. They warned against the welfare state. The welfare state is, you know, stuff like food stamps and entitlement programs, where the government endeavors to take care of everyone from the cradle to the grave. Jefferson wrote, "If we can prevent the government from wasting the labors of the people under the pretense of taking care of them, they must become happy." How will the government waste the labors of the people? Does anybody have any idea of how they would do that? Let's say, all right, how many of you said you had jobs? Raise your hand. All right, cool. If you don't have a job and you can't go get a job, believe me, go get one who will build your character. You've been making money, you feel more independent. I guarantee it is a great idea to go ahead and do that as early as possible. But when you get that paycheck, they take some of that money out. I remember I worked at Firestone. I made I had just become tire manager, and it was going to be a big bonus for me. I'm like, man, I'm going to hit my sales goal. I'm going to go in there. I'm going to sell more tires than anybody. I went in there, I hit that sales goal, and I got my paycheck. I was supposed to get a $1,200 bonus. They put down to $600, y'all. Do you think that might make me a little bit less inclined to work as hard for that tire goal next time? Or Eli, let's say you open a business, okay? What kind of business would you open? If you could just
A music store.
a music store. Cool. All right. Well, let's say you've opened a music store, but there's another store across town. It's probably a couple miles away, and they're just taking your business. So you burn the midnight oil. You stay up late. You get a better marketing campaign. You're the first one there in the morning. You're the last one to leave. You've really put in your hard work, right? All right. So in a couple months, you start seeing the results of that. You start seeing people buying more guitars, people buying more DVDs, more educational stuff to learn how to play instruments. Or you start selling more vinyls and stuff like that, and you start feeling good about yourself. Well, if the government comes along and says, "No, you're making twice as much as that store on the other side of town after you've worked so hard. We're going to take half the money that you made. We're going to give it over here." That's wasting your labor, isn't it? You're not going to be happy about that. Absolutely not. I wouldn't be either, and it's going to cause you not to want to innovate, to make a better store. That's why we got better cars. We've got better technology, because in America you've got a capitalist system that rewards that. Someone can come with the innovation, but if in communism you've got a government that owns everything. It would own your clothes, your phone, your car, your house, where you would just be average. And every single time in a communist society, everything is just the same, but the poverty line is way down here. Everybody's the same and everybody's broke. That's happened every time they try to figure this out. That's basically what Jefferson's saying right there. Bottom of page 29, they warned against confiscatory taxation and deficit spending. Jefferson said it was immoral for one generation to pass on the results of this extravagance in the form of debts to the next generation. He wrote, "We shall all consider ourselves unauthorized to saddle posterity with our debts, and morally bound to pay them ourselves, and consequently within that what may be deemed a period of a generation or the life expectancy of the majority." So he's saying every generation needs to pay off its debts. Every generation of Americans struggle to pay off the national debt up until the present one. They haven't worried about it. We've seen it blow out of proportion. The founders also warned that the only way for the nation to prosper was to have equal protection of rights and not allow the government to get involved in trying to provide equal distribution of things. They also warned against the pooling of property as advocated by the proponents of communism. So that would be the government coming and taking, that'd be them taking your store and saying, "We're just going to use this for the good of the people, and we'll put your name on it." You wouldn't like that very much. Samuel Adams said that they had done everything possible to make the ideas of socialism and communism unconstitutional. He said the utopian schemes of leveling or redistribution of wealth and a community of goods, central ownership of the means of production, distribution, all that stuff being spread around, are as visionary and impractical as those which vest all property in the crown. So he's saying you're crazy if you think we should do this. And of course, you might remember Barack Obama said, "We need to distribute the wealth." Let me be clear. To prevent the American eagle from tipping toward anarchy on the right or tyranny on the left, and to see that the American system remained in a firm, fixed position in the balanced center of the political spectrum, the founders campaigned for a strong program of widespread education. Channels were needed through which the founders and other leaders could develop and maintain an intelligent, informed electorate. Let's see, I need somebody read this next quote right here, where it says Jefferson, at the top of page 31.
How far down?
Just that quote right there.
If a nation expects to be ignorant and free in a state of civilization, it expects what never was and never will be. No other sure foundation can be devised for the preservation of freedom and happiness. Preach a crusade against ignorance, establish and improve the law for educating the common people. Let our countrymen know that the people alone can protect us against these evils of misgovernment.
Absolutely. It goes on to say what the founders really wanted was a system of educational communication through which they could transfer their great body of fundamental beliefs based on self-evident truths. This is talking about the Bible and prayer in schools. They knew that they had made a great discovery, and they wanted their posterity to maintain it. As Madison said, it is something which is incumbent on their successors to improve and perpetuate. We got one more slide right here. Yeah. And that's pretty much it for this first chapter. But this is something that we need to think about is Christians, being involved, being educated on what you're saying. And Gabe, I really appreciate you bringing that story to us. That your teacher had said that. It was really exciting for me to hear that. But at the same time, we're going to teach you, probably more so in week 5, how to respond to things like that. So if you have a teacher that says that, you'll know how to beg the question, how to ask a question. Usually, let's say, if anybody hears anything in their class, for the next week or next 2 weeks, if you want to say something, the best way to go about it is to ask a question, because usually nobody's going to get mad about you asking a question. Teacher, I'm confused. I was hearing from this crazy guy on Sunday school. He said this. What do you think about that? And every time they answer, you can say, well, he said this too. And you can just kind of lay it back on me that, he said this, he said that. And eventually, if they say anything that you don't have to go for, you can be like, oh, okay, and you go home and study and then figure out what to say next class. But definitely don't want anybody getting in trouble over that. But do we have any questions or comments or anything that you learned today that you thought was specifically interesting? No questions? What you got?
When you were talking about the debt and how we'll have to pay that back,
Mm-hmm.
they talk about, we were talking about it in class the other day, how we have backup in the government, we have gold for whatever
Mhm.
is in there, and we were supposed to turn it to silver. They tried to turn it to silver once, and it was supposed to just be gold,
Mhm.
and like how it destroyed the banks, because when we started doing the silver and gold standard, it
Yeah.
turned their banks, which turned our countrymen, which turned everybody below them
Mhm.
worse. I thought
Well,
that was cool.
what they did, I think it was in early 1900s, we got off the gold standard, and then later on, several decades later, we got off the silver standard. So you used to have like gold certificates and silver certificates that said you could go to a bank and say, I want this much money in silver, and they give you silver, and it was backed up with something that is concrete. Now, once they took us off of that standard, they can print money as fast as they want, because you can't print gold, you can't print more silver. They can print all this money as fast as they want to. Most of the money that we owe does not even exist. It's not there. It's a number in a data bank somewhere.